Hey, it's Francis Lamb, host of The Splendid Table. Every week on our show, we talk about food and cooking and the meanings of food and cooking. We talk with the most interesting people in food about their techniques, their culture, and everything in between. Whether it's about how fried chicken took over the world or how Instagram changes the way people are actually eating. It's a food show where everyone is welcome. Come join us. You can listen to The Splendid Table wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. We've been making cheese in Wisconsin since before we were even a state, which may be one reason why we win so many awards for it. It's what happens when a whole state dreams in cheese. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
Welcome to Spill and Dish, a podcast from the Specialty Food Association. Founded in 1952, SFA is the leading trade association and source of information about the $207 billion specialty food industry. We champion the food producers, retailers, and buyers who make up the specialty food world. Today's guest is Mike Kostyo, Vice President at Menu Matters. Mike has been a recurring guest on Fusion TV's The AV Club Show, has been featured on NBC News, CBS Radio, and Gimlet Media's Why We Eat What We Eat podcast, and is regularly featured in newspapers and magazines. Mike and his colleague, Maeve Webster, who is president of Menu Matters, will present the Summer Fancy Food Show session called The Retail Revolution, Decoding the New Consumer Path to Purchase, next month in New York City. Welcome, Mike. I've been lucky enough to attend several of your presentations, which I find both entertaining and enlightening. So I'm delighted to have you here today as a guest on Spill and Dish.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So at the upcoming Fancy Food Show, you're going to speak about today's consumer journey in food service and what it means for retail. Can you lead me on that journey?
Sure, absolutely. So if you think about kind of the traditional consumer path to purchase, every company or every brand might have their own, but it usually looks like a 2 to 3 stage cycle. So that first stage in the cycle is awareness. So, how does somebody become aware of your brand for the first time or kind of, interact with your brand and learn about it? Maybe it takes a couple times, but that's kind of all about teaching consumers that you exist. And then that second stage is that consideration or evaluation point where consumers are trying to figure out if they should purchase your brand, all of the things that go into that decision. Is the value there? Is it at a good price point? Is this something that I need in my life? Does it sound tasty? Actually to my own tastes, whatever those may be. So there's that really messy kind of consideration factor in the middle there. And then the last stage is the actual purchase itself. Hopefully, you get that consumer over those first 2 humps and they decide, yes, this is something that I want in my life. And so I actually make that purchase. And then some brands also have, later stages, the post-purchase or, maybe repeat purchasing is a major factor for you. So you can include that. But those first 3 are kind of the main ones that we'll think through. And so you can think, about that path to purchase and how it has evolved over the years. Years ago, it may have been really simple. I hear about a new brand on the radio or in the newspaper or on television. I went to the local grocery store and I purchased it, or maybe I went to the local restaurant and experienced it. And then, there weren't necessarily as many options. And so I purchased it again if I had a good experience. Now, with the amount of information that we have available to us today, with the avenues for communication that we have available to us today, that purchase path has gotten a lot messier. It's gotten a lot more complex, and it continues to evolve. So some examples of that from the awareness stage. So algorithms are obviously a really big factor on the tech side of the industry. And so those algorithms are often one way that consumers learn about your brand. So, maybe they're on TikTok or they're on a social media platform, and that algorithm knows that that particular person is of this generation, that they like these particular flavors, that they've been searching for things in this particular area. And so it feeds them maybe an advertisement or maybe your own, content that you've organically created as a brand. And so that's how they learn about it. I was just on Instacart the other day. So I was purchasing groceries on Instacart, and there's an algorithm-based kind of recommendation engine that says these are things that people around you are purchasing. So I'm here in Chicago, and so I saw what local Chicagoans are purchasing. And it does make you think, well, my neighbors like this. The people around me really like this. I'm a proud Chicagoan. Should I be eating this? And so I made that a couple purchases from that kind of recommendation. So in that first stage, algorithms are a kind of a new factor that you might have to consider. In that second stage, the consideration or the evaluation stage, that's where it's so messy these days. We do a lot of work around consumer need states and the needs that consumers have that we as the food industry really need to answer when they're making those purchasing decisions. And a lot of that right now is around trust. So a lot of consumers, unfortunately, have lost a lot of trust in the industry. They don't necessarily think, we have their best interests at heart. Maybe that's from a health consideration. They think that we don't make particularly healthy foods. Maybe that's from a pricing consideration. They think our products are really expensive. They're seeing things like shrinkflation, where packaging is getting smaller and, the prices are going up. So there's a lot of distrust of our industry. So building that trust becomes really important in that stage. And so actually now more than ever, consumers really lean on their friends and family for recommendations. They've lost a lot of trust also in kind of larger the government or kind of large authority figures. And so they look to kind of their friend and family and colleagues to make those purchasing decisions. So really, making sure that, the friends, family members that we're talking to speak well about your product is also a consideration throughout this kind of whole purchasing path. Also in there is, how do people research your product? So we see a lot more consumers today researching products on venues or avenues like Reddit. So, they don't necessarily trust, Google or the first recommendations that come up. So they'll go to Reddit where they think other people are talking about things and pop into there. And then that last, the purchasing stage, I think here you really have to think through some of the pain points that consumers have as they're making that final purchase. So, modern pain points that we have are maybe if you're ordering something for delivery, maybe there's a tech issue that they have. They're, have to go through too many screens, or maybe they see that cart is, has a few more the price is pretty high in that cart. It has a delivery surcharge in there. It has a third-party surcharge in there. So maybe that's kind of a pain point for the consumer. So you can think through kind of all these modern issues that consumers have as they're making this path to purchase and how they might affect your brand. So that's what we're going to talk about at the Fancy Food Show.
That's so interesting. Would you say that consumers are more price conscious now and therefore less open to suggestions that might, come about through the algorithms?
It's interesting, one, yes, if you ask consumers kind of in a vacuum, are they very price conscious right now? They'll say yes. And certainly they're, have really been hurt by the high prices. And we see them pulling back on some of those more expensive purchases, particularly recently. At the same token, we did some research earlier this year that shows that consumers still want to treat themselves. We still see that thing happening where, in times of strife, particularly economic strife, consumers still look for those opportunities for, kind of more affordable treats. So sometimes that means, they can't go on vacation or they're not necessarily making those big purchases like a new car, but, during the day they want a little piece of chocolate or they want to treat themselves in that way. And so I think that's kind of where the brand can insert themselves and kind of, showcase through that path to purchase that they're the opportunity, that they're going to be worthwhile when it comes to that purchase.
I can definitely relate to wanting to treat myself.
Right?
And I do it often.
We did a little study at the beginning of the year, and we asked consumers how many think that ice cream can be a self-care moment. And it was 37%, I want to say, of consumers said that ice cream could be a self-care moment. So you could definitely see consumers are still treating themselves.
Yes, I do. I often do treat myself with food as opposed to, like shopping for clothes or things like that. Um, I want to hear about the trends, about some maybe trends that we're seeing on restaurant menus. But first, let's pause for a short break.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. There's a reason when you think of Wisconsin, you think cheese. Cheese is a huge part of Wisconsin's history and future. In Wisconsin, the state of cheese, the tradition of cheese-making excellence began 180 years ago, before Wisconsin was recognized as a state. Immigrants traveled to settle in this lush green hills of Wisconsin, bringing their cheese-making traditions with them. These storied skills, combined with the freshest milk available, created a cheesemaking culture that is uniquely Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 1,200 cheesemakers, many of whom are third and fourth generation, continue to pass on old world traditions while adopting modern innovations in cheesemaking craftsmanship. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
Okay, we're back now talking to Mike Kostyo. Mike, can you tell me a little bit about some maybe big or emerging menu trends that you're noticing right now?
Sure. So one interesting one that we were just talking about this morning at Menu Matters were all the floral flavors that we're seeing on menus. So
Mm.
lavender, we see in a number of coffee beverages today, both at retail and on the food service side. I don't think there's a single floral flavor that's not growing on menus currently. And so that's a great example. They tend to do particularly well with younger consumers, and they tend to do really, really well if they also have some type of color that's also a feature of that menu item. So if you're menuing a lavender coffee or a lavender drink, if it also has that really, pretty purple color, so you can showcase it on social media. So that's a great example of, a trend that we're seeing, particularly now as we head into the spring and summer season. And I think that also ladders up to the larger trend of social media and kind of TikTokable videos. I know there's a lot of, discussion about where TikTok is going in the future and whether it will even be around. But whatever happens with it, the move to video has become so important for younger consumers. So on the food service side, a lot of the clients that we talk to all say these days, make sure that you have some foods on your menu that are really dynamic, that show some type of action. So there's that cheese pull, or maybe you're pouring something tableside, because you really want, your consumers, particularly those younger consumers, to get out the phones and make sure they're videoing it and, putting it on social media. And that ladders back to those, the path to purchase that I talked about, because when that consumer puts it on social media, that becomes, kind of a showcase to their friends and family that they loved this food service experience and they're kind of vouching for it.
That is so interesting. So it's kind of like a food is theater type of consideration, I guess, that restaurant operators have to be conscious of now.
Absolutely, 100%. And so much of that too is that you can get good food almost anywhere these days. We've done a really good job as an industry of leveling up our game. I mean, you could get gourmet food at the C-store, you can get gourmet food at your school or work now. And so a lot of it is the experience, particularly on the full service side. So, if you're going to sit down at a restaurant, you really have to kind of add something to the experience beyond the food to make it worthwhile for consumers.
That's great. A big thanks to Mike Kostyo for joining us today. You can find out more about this show at specialtyfood.com and heritageradionetwork.org, and remember to follow wherever you get your podcasts. Come back often to get to know the people who are shaping the future of food. Special thanks to Mike and to Heritage Radio Network, the world's pioneer food radio station. This is Spill and Dish, a Specialty Food Association podcast.
Spill and Dish, a Specialty Food Association podcast, is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.
Hey everybody, I'm Nick Latham.
And I'm Leah Bottoма.
And we're the hosts of Were You Raised by Wolves?
Each week we try to make the world a kinder, nicer place.
Well, that's the idea, at least.
I mean, we try.
Have you ever wondered what to do if you're ghosted?
Or what to do when a friend asks you to borrow money?
Or the proper way to eat Cheetos?
You know, the big questions.
So please find Were You Raised by Wolves wherever you listen.